And welcome once again to Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr. Joining me, Juan Zarate. He's our national security analyst. Juan, good to see you again.
Bob, great to be with you.
Let's talk a little bit about the elections in Iraq. Now, we've had elections before. What do these elections mean? Well,
it's significant in a couple ways, Bob. First, it's the first election where U.S. troops and presence isn't on the ground, right? So it's the Iraqis themselves not only conducting the elections but going through a democratic process. That's significant. What you have as well is the potential third term of Nouri al-Maliki, the Shiite leader who has in many ways been the center of power in Iraq since 2006, backed by the U.S. when he was there when the U.S. was present, but really a controversial figure, one who's seen as being overly sectarian, who's presiding over an Iraq that seems to be falling apart with all sorts of sectarian tensions and fights now with the Sunnis in the West, who had once been the U.S. allies in the attack against al-Qaeda. And so this is really an election of where we're pivoting not just for Iraq but for the region, asking, what comes next, especially if Nouri al-Maliki, as expected, wins.
So Iraq does not seem to be on a good trajectory. It seems to be getting less stable. And some people have called it a mess.
Absolutely. You've seen recurrent bombings. For example, you just had 2 in Baghdad, dozens killed. So the attacks have happened. What's happened even more fundamentally, Bob, is from the West, you've had disaffection from the Sunni populace. And it's really that Sunni-Shia divide within Iraq that is so volatile. We saw that at the height of the insurgency in 2006, 2007, the bombing of the Samarra mosque. And so this is really a tinderbox where if Maliki's not able to bring the Sunnis along with him in terms of the politics, you could see an insurgency grow, and not just al-Qaeda grow in power, but some of the insurgent groups grow as well.
So as bad as it is, though, I think everyone expects Maliki to win.
That's right.
So what hope is there that changes? I mean, it's very tough all of a sudden to win re-election and then have a completely different approach.
Well, I think there are 2 things. One, you started to see Maliki recognize that he needs some of the Sunni tribal support and Sunni political support. And so there have been some steps that he's taken to try to mend those fences, but not very well. And some would say actually quite the opposite. You've seen the Shia military forces attacking indiscriminately in the West. But I think the reality that Iraq is not doing well, it's actually descending into chaos, may force some political deals. And this is the hope that the political process may force something other than a military response to the problem, that Maliki will be able at some point to make some deals with the Sunnis, also with the Kurds, to ensure that Iraq doesn't fall off the cliff. Bear in mind, you've got Syria on the border causing problems. You've got a rise in the al-Qaeda affiliate, ISIS, or at least the al-Qaeda-like group. And this is a real tinderbox. And the U.S. isn't there now, and there's a pull to have the U.S. come back in, which is an interesting side story. And U.S. missiles are now heading back in to support the Iraqi forces. So this is a difficult situation.
And quickly, as we wrap up, when the U.S. troops left Iraq, when that war wound down, what was al-Qaeda in Iraq had been somewhat weakened. It was still there.
Right.
But now it's coming back with a vengeance. What threat is that to Maliki?
Well, it's a huge threat. It's a threat because they and their allies are getting much closer to Baghdad. So they're making inroads in the West. And they're actually, on some of their propaganda, claiming, that they're 10 miles out. The barbarians are at the gate. And so there's a real physical threat as well as a political threat, that this is a vanguard of the Sunni opposition and the disaffection with his rule. As well, you've got the Syrian conflict, which is really providing the cauldron of conflict that's allowing this group from Iraq to foment, to bring in foreign fighters and funding. And so the situation in Syria is not helping either. The situation in the West and Iraq is a really terrible one. And we'll see if this election helps, but it might not help much.
All right. Juan, thanks as always.
Thank you, Bob.
And thanks to you for watching Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr. We'll see you next time.